Okay, so today we're going to move on to a new section of notes, and just like the other times that we've done notes through a video, I'm going to have you take them as you watch this and submit them to me when you're finished. So this section of notes is a little bit of a mishmash of things. One thing, which is the first thing I'm going to talk to you about, is something that for some reason I neglect to include it in the intro section, and I should just do it in the very first thing. But it's about web accessibility, and I'm going to have you probably do some more things with web accessibility so you can get a better understanding of it. In previous years, I've done some pretty extensive activities or online videos where we kind of get a feel for it. But web accessibility, all that this means is it means creating a website that is equal for everyone who accesses it. No matter what disability they might have. Okay, so the concept of this is everyone has a right to see, well, I shouldn't say see, everyone has a right to access content on a web page without losing any of the experience, no matter what their disability might be. So if a person is visually impaired, they should still somehow be able to know the content that's available on the web page. So if I had a lot of graphics, a visually impaired person might not be able to see them, but they should still be provided like a rich description so that they're not missing out on that. A person who is hearing impaired, if your website has video with sound or just an audio file, they need to be provided with a script or closed captioning of what they're missing. So that's the idea of it. And this is actually something that falls under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Which you may have learned about possibly in civics class or government class, I suppose. But the Americans with Disabilities Act, this applies to websites. Americans with Disabilities Act is why we have designated parking spots for people with permits for parking with disabilities. That is why buildings that have multiple levels have elevators. That's why there are wheelchair ramps in public places. And that's why now when you stay at a hotel, the hotel pool has a like a wheelchair lift so that they can have that same experience. So it's the same concept. Okay, so what every page must have is, it has to do with the HTML tag. So again, I apologize for not covering this. For some reason, I always seem to neglect it. What we do is, we already know that the second line of every web page should be the HTML tag, right? So what we're going to add is an attribute to HTML. So we're just going to add to the HTML tag a space, lang equals, and then quotation marks, en. There are a lot more things that we can do for accessibility, but this is like one big giant step toward that. There will be a time where every website must be compliant with the ADA. At this point, it's nonprofit organizations, government institutions, schools, universities, things like that. But like I said, I'll probably have you do more with that in the future and learn a little bit more. Okay, so that's just to keep in mind. Second line of your web page, your HTML tag, just add lang equals en in quotation marks, and obviously that is defining the language. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the second topic, which is lists in HTML. And you're going to find that this is pretty similar to what you probably learned when you used Microsoft Word in a previous class. So there are 3 types of lists that we can put into a web page. And the first type of list that we're going to talk about is what we call an unordered list. With Microsoft Word, you would think of this as a bulleted list. So what does an unordered list do? Well, it's going to place a symbol in front of each line of text. With HTML, this is very, very limited. You're just going to get a little black dot in front of each line. Once we get into the CSS language, you can customize that bullet to be all kinds of different symbols or actually images, kind of again like in Microsoft Word, you can customize a bulleted list. Okay, so here's how we create a list in HTML. We start out with the UL tag. That's the beginning tag that tells the browser we are starting an unordered list. And then what we do is we use an LI tag that stands for list item. We put this tag in front of each line that we want in the list. We put a closing LI tag after each line. We repeat this as many times as we need to for however many lines you have in your list. And when you're all done, you just add a closing UL tag. So it's very, very simple. So what I'm going to do right now is make a quick file in HTML. I'm still just using Notepad. I should probably do Notepad++. I need to download that and install it, and then it'll match what you're doing more. Okay, so remember we always have our doc type HTML tag and then our HTML tag, but now here I'm going to add lang equals en. Okay, I'm still going to have my head, always going to have a head in my document. And every time you make a web page, you're always going to include the title tag. So I'm going to put samples of lists. That'll describe what this file is. I'm just going to throw in a heading text tag. Lists, lists, lists. And then I'm going to do my closing head tag. Now I'm going to move on to the body. And I might as well just add a little color. So I'll do a background color of blue. So that'll be 0000FF. And I'm going to make my text color white. And remember, we get white by putting the strongest value for each of the 6 digits of my hex code. So all F's will get us white. Okay, now all I'm going to do here is make a bulleted or unordered list. So before I do that, I think I might put a little bit of text, so I'll go strong. Mrs. Rivera's favorite foods. Okay. And then maybe I want to do a P tag to double space below that, and now I'm going to put in my list. So here we go with what we just learned. I have my UL tag, and I'll go LI, steak, and a closing LI tag. Lasagna, closing LI tag. Shrimp, closing LI tag. I could keep going and going and going. I like a lot of different foods, but I'm just going to stop there, and I'll put in a closing UL tag to end the list. Again, that's a very important closing tag. And then I'll throw in my closing body tag because my content's all done. And then I'll do my closing HTML tag. So there's my file. Now I'm just going to save it to my desktop on my computer. I'll just call it lists.html. And now I'm going to go to my desktop and my crowded desktop and find it. There it is. Open it up. And there it is. So I've got my list. There's my heading text. I have my title tag up here, sample of lists. I have Mrs. Rivera's favorite foods, and that's showing up in bold because I use the strong tag. And then here's my unordered list with a little dot in front of it. Now I think I said little black dot when I was talking earlier. That was kind of the wrong thing to say because it'll be whatever color your text color is defined as. If you don't do anything, it will be black. All right, so that is the unordered list. And now we're going to talk about an ordered list. That's what they're called in HTML. When we use them in Microsoft Word or any kind of a word processing program, we think of it as a numbered list. But ordered makes sense, right? 1, 2, 3, some kind of chronological order. When we do this in HTML, it's very limited. We are just going to get numerals, 1, 2, 3. When we get into the CSS language, you can customize this just like you could in a Word document where we could do Roman numerals, we could do letters, we could do all kinds of different things. So to do this is really simple. All we're going to do is start with an OL tag, and we're still going to use the LI tag. and we're going to put it in front of each line. Repeat that as many times as you need to for your list, and then when you're all done, you put in a closing OL tag, and then you get a numbered or ordered list. And I guess I should do this, even though this is kind of a no-brainer. Just a little description, places, consecutive number in front of each line of text, so that we know what an ordered list does. But I think you already know without the description or definition. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to that file that I created. I'm just going to change my tag. So where it says like my favorite foods, instead of a dot in front of each of those foods, I'm going to turn this into an ordered list. So all I have to do here is change my UL tag to an OL tag. And change my closing one to a closing OL tag. So I'll save that, and now if I go back to my page and I refresh it, and that's the beauty of working in a Notepad or Notepad++, you can do your changes, save them, go back to your browser where the file's already open, and then just refresh it. So there, we just turned it into an ordered list, 1, 2, 3. Simple enough, right? That leaves one more of list type that we need to talk about. This one's not as common in web pages, but search engines actually use them quite a bit. And it's what we call a definition list. And so what this one does is it puts a term with a definition indented below it. Now I say a term and a definition, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that. It puts text on a line, and then it indents some more text below it. You might use this like if you're taking notes for a class where you have terms and definitions. Maybe in your notebook you do it that way, where you indent below, and that's what it does. But again, it doesn't truly have to be terms and definitions. So what happens with search engines is that a lot of search engines, hold on one second. Okay, I had a little interruption there, someone at the door, so I don't quite remember what I was saying before I paused the video. I think I was talking about search engines. If you go to Google or Yahoo and you do a search, it'll have the links for your websites to go to, but below that, typically, they will indent a description of the site that you're going to. So I'm going to show you how to do this one. And again, it's not quite as common as an ordered list or an unordered list, but we have a DL tag, and that's just going to tell the browser, hey, we're starting a definition list here. This one's going to have more than one tag that we have to use for each of these. So we start out with a DT tag, and so we're going to put this in front of each term. In front of each term. And then below that, we would include a DD tag. So DT stands for definition term. DD stands for definition, which is a little redundant. Kind of annoys me, but that's what it is. And this goes in front of each definition. And then a closing DD tag. So both of those need closing tags at the end. And then you would repeat that as much as you need to. And then when you're done, you do a closing DL tag and you're all good. There's your definition list. So what I want to do is go back to my file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep my ordered list in there for the fun of it. And then I'm going to put in P tag to double space, and I'm going to start a new list. So let me go strong, HTML terms and definitions, closing strong tag, and so I'm going to start my definition list right here. So I've got my DL tag to open it. Then I'm going to go DT, and I'll put the word tag, closing DT, DD, name for an HTML command, closing DD. Then I'm going to move on and put in another one, DT, and I'll put attribute, closing DT. And then let's do another definition. Attribute is an extra command added to an HTML tag, and a closing DD. And then I'm just going to stop there with just a couple for an example. So then the last thing I do is a closing DL tag. So now I'm going to save that document and go back to my browser, hit refresh, and you can see how that works. So where it says tag and attribute, those were my DT tags. And where it shows name for an HTML command or extra command added to an HTML tag, those are the DD tags for the definition within the definition list. So the reason we have to sometimes use these is because HTML is very, I've told you this, it's not intuitive, and you can't always place text where you really want it to be placed. So this is how you would sometimes be able to manipulate text where you'd like it to be. What I'm going to have you do right now is submit these notes to me. This is not all the notes that we're doing in this section, because you'll notice that at the heading of my document, I had it listed as web accessibility and HTML lists and tables. So we still have to talk about tables, but we're going to stop here and then you can work with lists for a little bit. If you have any questions, let me know.